Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Genuine Chit-Chat. This week I am once again joined by Gough of Beernuts Productions. Now, if you tuned in last week, you'll know that Gough is a blind filmmaker from Australia. I also spoke to him in a previous episode. I believe that was episode 48. So, go check that out if you want a bit more background information on Gough, like how he became blind and some of the other sort of backgroundy details and things. So, check that out, episode 48. If you've already checked out episode 48, or you honestly aren't that fussed at all, and you've heard part 1, no problem at all, proceed. Just for a little bit of information, in part 2, obviously this one, me and Gough speak about him potentially making a sequel to his documentary, I Will Not Go Quietly, which is available for free download at Beernuts Productions. I've included a link in the show notes to Beernuts. Go there, you can find the appropriate links to download the documentary. As well as that, we talk about some of Gough's favourite music, TV shows and podcasts. We talk about Breaking Bad a little bit. We speak about how Gough met his friend Simon, which is someone he frequently collaborates with. We speak about how he really dislikes people telling him and anyone else how to live their life, which jumps off about essentially how some of the ways that Gough has been discriminated against in his life. Gay marriage comes up at some point. The importance of humour comes up. Aliens comes up. People should follow their dreams. It's a fantastic conversation. It goes in all kinds of different directions, which is always the best kind of chats. And as always, I really like chatting to Gough, and he's an incredibly inspiring guy. So, you're in for a great podcast. Before the chat gets started, there'll be a quick promo for the Piecing It Together podcast. And as you guys know, I've played their promo a few times before. They're a friend of the show. So, go, if you haven't already, be sure to go check those guys out. I think that's about it from me, guys. Just a tiny thing is just any frequent listeners will realise this intro and outro, maybe the last one, a little bit echoey. I think the episode might be a little bit as well. If you are really an audiophile and it really does bother you, then it's going to be okay, because it's just like I'm in the middle of moving, essentially. I'm using a different room to what I usually use, so that's why it sounds a little bit different to normal. That will be resolved soon. I can't use the room that I did. Maybe, I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. If it does bother you that much, then there's not much I can do about that. Just check another episode. But this is not going to be how it sounds permanently, so you don't need to worry about that. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling on. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. Be sure to like, subscribe, blah, 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 social media things, sharing, etc. And after the chat with Gough, I will be back at the end, as I am at every episode, just to give information on upcoming episodes and the usual sort of rambly mess that I have in my outros. So look forward to that. Anyway, guys, thanks as always for tuning in, and I'll talk to all of you at the end.
Was A Quiet Place inspired by Signs It Comes at Night and War for the Planet of the Apes? Was Ready Player One influenced by Avatar, Wreck-It Ralph, and The Last Starfighter? Is the Hurricane Heist more influenced by Sharknado or Geostorm? These are the kinds of questions my guest co-hosts and I discuss on my podcast, Piecing It Together. Every week we look at a new movie and try to figure out what other movies inspired it. Whether it's the story, the character development, tone, or even use of music. Every movie was influenced by something that came before it, and we want to figure out what. Check out Piecing It Together on your favorite podcast app, or check us out on piecingpod.com. You can also follow us on social media at piecingpod. Piecing It Together is a part of the All Points West podcast network.
Welcome to Genuine Chit-Chat, where we have honest conversations with interesting people. And I'm your host, Mike Burton.
So I have nobody telling me what I can and can't do. So I make the content that I want to make. And a lot of the actors, actually, it's funny because they're used to working on commercial type projects. When we're at rehearsals, they're like, how quick do I have to do my lines? How much time do we have to do this scene? And I always say to them, you've got as much time as it takes to do the jokes correctly. So there's no stress. The actors love it because there's no stress on them to get things done in a certain amount of time. The joke is told how it needs to be told, and I've got nobody saying what I can and can't do. So there's no third party involvement, which means that it's completely independent, which I think lends, as you well say, to a better product, because I've got nobody, breathing down my neck saying this joke's inappropriate. So I can push the lines as far as I want to push them, and I can, I can do that joke that the studio might say, oh, that's a little bit rude, you can't do that, or I don't like that, or whatever. I can do all of that stuff, and that's absolutely fantastic. And I think I genuinely do believe it leads to a better product, which is great. It means that, hopefully people enjoy it that bit more, so it's fantastic.
Well, yeah, exactly. And, being an independent creator is always important to be able to keep a hold of your intellectual property. And obviously, as you have every aspect of the film is yourself doing it from start to finish. You have every piece of that puzzle, so you never have to worry about sort of, if you did want to make a sequel to any of your movies and things, you could be like, well, I'm just going to do it. I don't have to ask his permission because I own all of that. And I want to ask as well, with it, just in regards to the documentary, obviously I know that you made that, and then things from them has just been comedy sort of styles and things. Have you contemplated going back and making another documentary or doing anything else in a more serious style, or are you just from here on out, you're just sticking with comedy?
No, a few people have actually said that they would like to see a sequel, I Will Not Go Quietly 2, because obviously that was done back in 2010, and so they would like to see how things have progressed since 2010, because I mean it's nearly 10 years ago now. It's a long time when you think about it. I mean, time really does fly. So yeah, so I have had a few people, and it is something that I have absolutely strongly considered. I don't know when or if I would do it, but it is something that I can absolutely do, and I probably will do at some point. I just don't know when. But yeah, no, absolutely. You know, I like to make my projects. They might be more leaning towards the comedy style, but I always like to make sure that they're as different as possible, whether it is in tone or subject matter, or, you know, the way it's put together or made. I like to make all my projects a little bit different so that folks don't get bored with what I'm doing. So, yeah, no, absolutely. I have thought about doing another documentary, and I probably will at some stage, absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. And a question as well for yourself is that what sort of, not only comedy, but what sort of things are you watching in your free time? What sort of stuff are you, like TV shows you're watching, or if you listen to any podcasts, or if there's anything music-wise that you listen to specifically? Like, I think we touched on it briefly previously, what some of the influences you had before starting a lot of these comedy things, but I don't think I asked what you actually listen to and what you actually watch at the moment in your free time.
Well, if we're talking about TV, I was obsessed with Breaking Bad. I thought that was the greatest show I've ever seen in all my life. I love everything about it. I think it's incredibly well written, shot, acting. I mean, I just love that show. I've seen it like countless times. I got the box set. I'll watch it like just religiously. Love it. And so obviously the prequel/sequel, Better Call Saul, I'm really enjoying that. So that's season 4 is finished. So season 5 should be out sometime this year, hopefully. So I really enjoy Better Call Saul. I think that's it's. I mean, nothing's going to compare to Breaking Bad, but it's a good silver medal. You know what I mean? It's still a really, really great show, and I really enjoy the way they've done it. I think it's really clever. I really love it. So yeah, I like. I like that sort of style. The more sort of darker humor is sort of where I sort of tend to lean when it comes to. That's why I really enjoyed Breaking Bad, because I think it's a lot funnier than what people might first initially think on their first viewing. I think there's a lot more jokes in there than what people might have actually thought, if that makes sense. It's quite a funny show in some parts, but and Better Call Saul is quite funny as well. It's very funny actually. But yeah, they're two shows that I really, really, really love. So I don't watch a huge amount of TV. I'm pretty fussy. I watch a lot of films. I'm a big film goer. I actually just yesterday I went to go see Booksmart. That just came out in the cinema here in Australia. It's been out. I've got a friend that lives in London, and she was the one that said to me, "You got to go watch it," because she knew that I would enjoy it, and I did. I thought it was really funny. But yeah, so I know that was out about a month or 6 weeks ago over there in the UK, but we just got it just yesterday. So I went along and I quite enjoyed that. It was quite funny. So yeah, that's a recent movie recommendation, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I haven't seen Booksmart actually. I have to pop it on the list. I know that you recommended me a movie last time we spoke as well, and I've got it noted down on I've got this list of films that I need to watch, but it did look really funny, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it was at all.
It was Still Life. I think because we were going through English films that I enjoyed, and I remember talking about This Is England, which I thought was an amazing film. Again, I tend to always lean towards the darker, and that's quite a dark film in places, and it's an incredible film. But yeah, Still Life was the one I think I recommended to you because it's a English comedy film, but it's really, really fantastic and quite moving at the end. It's a really, really top class film. The English do it well, actually, in regards to that sort of comedy, I find. So yeah, and in regards to music, I'm kind of alone. None of my friends like this at all, but I was mad for Oasis when they were up and about. And Liam Gallagher has just got his new album coming out soon, so I'm pretty excited about that. So I'll be checking out that because I just think he is hilariously amusing. I think so is Noel Gallagher. They're both very funny. But there's actually a really cool documentary that was released about Oasis back in 2016 I think it was called Supersonic, and it was looking back at their first 3 years in existence, and they've got all old footage and all that sort of stuff, and Liam and Noel are actually on it, and actually their mum is interviewed on it, and so it's really, really cool. It's a really great documentary. So if anybody out there is a big fan of Oasis like I am, and they haven't, I'm sure they would have seen that documentary because it was a big deal. But yeah, no, it's a high quality doco, that one, but yeah, really cool.
And out of interest, obviously, you don't have to say my one because I know whenever I ask people this question, they always feel pressure to say it. But do you, out of interest, listen to any podcasts or anything like that?
Well, genuine Chit-Chat, of course, of course. It's funny actually because I've been interviewed on a few. I obviously listen. I listen to a podcast before I go on it to see what it's about and all that sort of stuff. And some of them I've ended up just listening to because I've ended up genuinely enjoying them. I thought I've listened to them, then they've interviewed me, and it was all cool. And they were really nice guys or girls or whoever they might have been. And I've ended up just starting to listen to them just because again, it's not something that I go hunting out podcasts. It's not. I'm not that. Yeah, I don't really go hunting for them, but they just kind of sort of fall like I say, I hadn't heard about Genuine Chit-Chat until someone told me about you, and I contacted you and you said, okay, come on the show. And I had a listen. I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then, I did my interview with you and it went really well and I was really happy. And so, I just tune in from time to time, and the same goes with a few of the other podcasts that I've been on too. So it's a funny way to meet people and discover people. And it's all, it's kind of by accident through what we were talking about earlier with marketing. It kind of just happens by accident, which is kind of cool.
It is definitely cool. I mean, I've met a lot of cool people, obviously yourself included, due to purely of podcasting, of other podcasters who've sent me recommendations or have, just hit me up and said they like the show, or other ones I've seen them on something and I've been like, oh, do you want to come on my show? We can talk about whatever. Then I find out they're a podcaster or they've got some other sort of pursuit, and then you discover them, you speak to them and things, and then you check out their things they enjoy, a lot of the time for the prep for the podcast. And sometimes you get someone, you go, oh, they're a podcast, that's cool. And then you look into it and they're a podcaster. Oh, and they're an author. Oh, and they're a life coach. Oh, and they also made this and they made that. And it's like, Jesus, it makes me feel so insignificant by comparison when I talk to all these incredibly interesting people. But yeah,
I think what you said earlier is also correct in that. So I'll listen to whatever podcast. We'll use yours as the example because that's the one everyone's listening to now. So, you listen to Genuine Chit-Chat and all of a sudden, I've learned about other people and so I've got, oh, well, that sounds really cool. I'll check that out. So, it's I've discovered, other, creative media and other people and all that sort of stuff through listening to podcasts, which I never would have learnt about unless I had have listened to the podcast. So it's because it expands your horizons, so to speak, So that's really cool too, because I mean, that's the great thing about podcasts, generally speaking, is that people like myself who struggle to get on more commercial type media, I get a platform to tell everybody about Beernuts Productions, and then hopefully they can go on the website and download and enjoy my films, whereas they would have never had that opportunity previously. And the same goes for me. I get to go onto other people's website and enjoy their content, which I would not have done previously if I hadn't have heard about them on a podcast. So I think podcasts are playing a really important part in helping, creative, independent artists sell their work, whether they be musicians or filmmakers or whatever they might be. I think podcasts are really important and a really great way for people to, share their work with people who may not have otherwise have known they existed, which is really, really cool.
Oh, I 100% agree, and I imagine with your line of work as well, you've probably met like quite a few actors and obviously people, members of your production team, and obviously the individuals who sort out marketing and that sort of thing. I bet you've met a lot of really interesting individuals who you wouldn't have really met if you'd done Beer Nuts. Like, is your friend, was it Simon, your friend who does a lot of the sort of producing work? Did you meet him because of starting Beer Nuts, or did you know him prior, or how'd that sort of work?
No, it was funny actually. How I came across Simon was purely accidental. I'd hired a different guy to come down. It was the third film I've ever done. So The Advertising Meeting is the name of the movie that people, obviously it's up and available on the Beernuts Productions website. And so I contacted a different guy who runs a production studio. And I said to him, I need a guy to film because, to go back a bit further. So after I did the documentary, I thought, I'll do my next film now. So the next film, I'm like, I'm going to actually hire some crew to actually do this because it's going to be a lot easier than to do it myself because there's, it's a scripted project and all that sort of stuff. So I hired a couple of guys and they were jerks, basically. They sort of just filmed what they wanted to film, which kind of doesn't really work. So I sacked them, got rid of them. And so for the next project, which was The Advertising Meeting, I contacted a different production studio and I'm like, I want to hire you to film my movie. And the guy's like, yeah, no worries. And I think he thought that I was, I don't know, a hack or a dickhead or whatever he thought I was. I've got no idea. And so on the actual day a couple of days before filming, Simon calls me up and he's like, hey, this is Simon here. And I'm like, oh, who are you? And he's like, oh, well, I won't mention the other fellow's name. So-and-so got another booking and can't do your film now, which I think is total bullshit. But that, again, is beside the point. He said, so I can't. So he called me up and he said, can I replace him? Would that be okay with you? And I'm like, well, I mean, this is literally, we were shooting on a Saturday and this conversation took place on a Wednesday. So I'm like, well, I don't really have a huge choice in the matter, so I suppose it's going to have to be. So Simon came along and he did a fantastic job. So after we finished editing, because I edit with Simon as well, after I finished editing, I said to Simon, well, do you want, next time I do a project, how about I just contact you directly, leave the other people out of it, and we'll just do it by ourselves? And he's like, sounds good to me. So, yeah, that's sort of how Simon came to be. And I've done every project since. I've done it with him. So, yeah, we've done out of the 17 films, we've done all but 3. So, yeah, we've done 14 out of the 17 together, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, it's a really good working relationship now. He sort of knows what I'm thinking before I have to tell him, which is great because he knows my style of how I like things done and how I like things shot. So it's really cool when you can have somebody like that. And it's, it's a complete accident. So if this other guy hadn't have been a jerk and ditched me for somebody else, then I would never have met Simon. So it's funny just how life works out like that sometimes.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things as well where it's nice to have someone who is a partner in some ways, who can assist in things, but without, you have the good thing of that you didn't start Beer Nuts with someone else. So you still have the creative freedom and you still have sort of the authoritarian veto to anything because you're at the top, and the same as myself. Obviously, I don't have any employees or have that sort of relationship with people in that sense, but anything
Don't
I
be
want
like
to happen
that,
with the
Mike.
show.
You've got all the power. You've got the power. You can walk around and just tell people how shit needs to be. Don't undersell it.
Well, thank you very much. But it's one of those things where I can do anything I want to do within reason for myself. If I want to have a chat with a mate of mine about whatever, pot plants, when you're saying that because I can see a pot plant over there. If you heard a chat about that for an hour, I imagine not a huge amount of people would actually want to listen, but it's my show. I do what I want. When you want to release an episode or something, as we discussed slightly earlier, you can do what you want without having a studio breathing down your neck or telling you can't have this talk with this person because you're your own, you are the head of it all, but you still build these working relationships with people. I've got several friends who are in podcasts and things who if I wanted them to give me their honest opinion on an episode or something, or if I wanted them to help in, I've got friends who are sound engineers, I've got friends who are experts in social media, this, that, and the other, who like, I've got people I can collaborate with who can help me, but I'm still the figurehead, the top of my own project. And I think that's what obviously you do as well, is like, you've got a working relationship with Simon, and it is really helpful to have someone there who can assist with editing and give you sort of honest opinions on things so you can rely on, but you don't have to necessarily give up any of your sort of creative freedoms in a way.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So the first, so as soon as I finish writing a script, I'll send it to Simon to tell and organize a date with him. He's the first person that I contact, because obviously he actually, that's the other good thing about Simon, he actually owns all the equipment. So occasionally we have to rent something, but very rarely. So that's the other reason why Simon's really cool, because he's got a garage full of all the audio-visual stuff you'd ever want. So so I contact Simon. We go through what equipment we need. We obviously, the first thing we do is get a date that we're going to shoot and edit, but then we just go through what we need equipment-wise and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, like I said, because we've been doing it so long now, he kind of knows what I like and what I want anyway now, which is really, really cool. So it makes working a lot easier when the guy that you're working with knows exactly how you like things done. So, and he's never afraid to put an opinion forward and say, oh, how about we do this, or this might be a good idea. And I'll say either yes or no. And it's really, really cool. And look, that goes for everybody as well. So even like, I know I've told you previously, I'm really strict with my scripts with the actors. So I don't like actors improvising my scripts, so how things are written on the page. I have it's an old fashioned saying, but if it's not on the page, it doesn't make the stage. And that's kind of what I sort of live by with the actors. And some actors like it, some don't. But I mean, that's how I like things done. So, if they don't like it, then they don't have to work for me. That's cool. I mean, I don't hold grudges. People can do what they want to do. So that's cool. But so I go through, like I said, and actors who do a great job. And if I think when I'm doing another film, if they'll fit a particular role, then I'll get them in and I'll audition them for that as well, So it's cool. I've got quite a nice sort of database of different actors and crew members, like artists and musicians and other people who I use, which so when now obviously, like I say, this is our 17th film. That means I've got a good database of people that I can sort of choose from with different projects, which is really, really cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. And one thing I actually wanted to ask about you, is a slight change of gear in a sense, was I want to know some of your opinions on society, which that's not the whole question, because that's just such an open-ended question. There's not really anything you could answer that with. But I meant more so in a lot of beer nuts things I've noticed sort of subtle mentions of society and things like that, societal issues. You've got things like, social media that we've already spoken about, and mobile phones, but also obviously you've got the prostitution untold story. You've got all these different sort of aspects of parts of society. So I imagine that you have quite a being obviously not only an independent filmmaker, but also obviously being a blind man. I imagine that you see society through quite a different lens to what a lot of other individuals kind of see in a lot of ways. Like I imagine, most of it, as you can tell by a lot of your films, how the world works. You're not in a complete different bubble to everyone else, but it must be, you must see a lot of things that maybe other people don't quite see, just on the basis that some, I know that from our previous conversations, you've said that some people do actually treat you differently. So I imagine you kind of can almost see through the bullshit a little bit more, because you've had that sort of for your entire life. You've had to really kind of try with certain aspects of people. Yeah,
no, that's everything you said is pretty much correct. So absolutely. So I like to, just generally speaking, when people hit up the website, they'll see a lot of the films about social sort of issues that people are quite sensitive about. So I've done drugs, I've done prostitution, I've done pornography, I've done the environment, and I like to get subjects like that and really tear them apart. I am a big believer, though, in that I'm here to entertain, I'm not here to preach. So I purposely don't put my opinions front and square. I try and I try. There's a subtle message in them, I suppose, but I don't. My number one aim is to entertain, and then anything that comes secondary to that comes secondary to that. But you are quite right in what you said earlier. I mean, I do like to talk about social things within my work. I think that's sort of important, just to weed a few little things in there, I think is kind of important. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I want to know sort of, do you have any concerns generally about sort of, we don't have to delve too deep into this. I'm just generally interested of just, do you have any big worries about society? Some people think, for example, climate change is going to be the thing that potentially ends us. Other people think artificial intelligence. Other people think, governments becoming way too overpowerful and things like that. And obviously I'm not saying you should preach necessarily, but I'm just interested in, out of those things or anything else, is there one kind of bigger thing that you just either think about or are slightly more worried about, that if we leave it unchecked for too long, it could end up being a bit more detrimental to society?
Well, I'm a huge believer in allowing people to live their lives how they want to live them, and not to. I don't believe in, whether it be governments or anybody, telling anybody what they should do, say, think, feel, act, etc., etc., etc. So that's why I'm not huge on religion as an umbrella. I'm not saying any specific religion. I'm just saying the thought of it. I just don't like how it can be controlling. I don't like people telling other people how they need to live their life. I think people should be. I'll take it back to something in Australia at the moment. There's a really big thing with lockout laws. Now, lockout laws are essentially, if you go to a bar or a nightclub or somewhere that serves alcohol, if you're not in that establishment by 1 a.m., you can't get into that establishment. It's a lockout law. And so I think that's bullshit, because I think that you should be allowed to go into any establishment whenever you want. I don't think that they should say no go. I mean, if you're let's say you're a cab driver, right? You drive a taxi and your shift ends at 3 a.m. in the morning, and you've had a no good, rotten shift. You've done 3 p.m. till 3 a.m. You've had a bunch of drunks or some really annoying teenagers or whatever it might have been, and you just want to go to a bar and have a pint before you go home. You can't. And I think that's bullshit. I think you absolutely should be allowed to. You should, I'm a firm believer in, governments and whatnot not getting in people's faces and their space. If you want to hug a tree, then who am I to tell you that you can't hug a tree? If you serious, man, I'm dead serious. I mean,
I agree.
The whole thing with gay marriage, that only just got legalized in Australia just recently. And there's a wonderful comedian here in Australia. He's one of my all-time favorite comedians, called Sean McAuliffe. And he said it so beautifully. He goes, I've got to get this right because I don't want to misquote the man. He said, what two men who live in Perth, who I've never met before, decide to do in the privacy of their own home, well, of course that's my business. And I mean, you can't sum it up any better than that. I mean, it's just, that's how ridiculous the argument for the no vote is. I mean, it's just like, if people want to marry, let them marry. I mean, what do I care? It's got nothing to do with me. I mean, just, they're not invading my space in any way, so let them be. I'm just a big fan in people being allowed to live their lives how they want to live them. I don't have the right to tell somebody else what they can and can't do, and vice versa. I don't think, and that's one of the things that I get really upset about. Back when I first started Beernuts Productions, when people said to me, you can't make films because you're blind. Well, fuck you, buddy. How do you know what I can and can't do? You don't even know me. I've met you over email and a phone conversation. You don't know me. You don't know what I can and can't do. You don't know my skill set. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. So, it's just, so I suppose it comes from a place of being discriminated against, because, I mean, I was denied a proper education. I was denied employment opportunities, all based on my disability through people's ignorance. So I think that's where that sort of passion for that comes from, because I think I've kind of lived it, and so I don't like it, and so I don't think other people should have to put up with it either. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, 100%. I agree with you on every mark there, and I have almost identical to beliefs with yourself. I mean, I'm not a religious individual. I'm atheist, maybe agnostic, kind of depends what day you get me on. But yeah, I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in heaven and hell and things. And I'm just that thing of, well, if you want to believe in those things, you are 100% within your right to do these things. But don't be horrible to sort of other people and stopping anyone else doing what they want to do, all because you believe that this book is written by God. Like, I haven't got a problem with I haven't got a problem with religion in sort of low-key, small ways, and people just believing in a God, praying to them, believing Jesus said, love thy neighbour. That's all fine, no problem at all. But it's when they start, the gay thing is a big part of that. It's like, in America, obviously, it took them ages to legalize gay marriage statewide. It was just like all these people are protesting and arguing about it and all these things. It's just like, exactly as you say, it's like, it's no one's business. It doesn't matter. Why is this even when I heard about it when I was younger, in England, gay marriage was legalized quite a few years ago now. But I remember hearing that being gay was actually illegal in the UK until, I think it was the late 60s, early 70s. And I was like, my parents were like alive then. And I'm like, and they were alive at the time when being gay was illegal. And I'm like, how was that even ever a thing? And I'm like, obviously the reasoning due to the religious hold that a lot of England had for a very long time. And it does piss me off when it's just like people telling people they can't do this, they can't be who they are, they can't do this. And I was thinking, when you were saying about it before you mentioned the whole blind thing, I was thinking that sounds exactly like when we had the conversation previously where, people telling you that you can't do things, albeit if you're gay and you want to marry the man that you love or the woman that you love, or, if you're a blind individual who wants to make films, there's a rapper called Scroobius Pip who's got a stutter and he has a podcast and he's a rapper. So it's like, you've got all these people who are like telling people to not do stuff, and they're also always the people who don't actually seem to achieve anything in their lives.
Yeah, no, well, I agree. I think I'm with you in regards to religion. I think if it makes somebody be a better person, love thy neighbor, and if they were a jerk beforehand and then they found God and turned into a nice person, then fantastic. That's great. You know what I mean? So that's marvelous. But I mean, I don't believe in people shouldn't dictate to others what they should do. People should just be free to live their life how they want to live it. And like you say, I mean, it comes down to, in the US, your US listeners who might be persons of color that might be listening, they would be nodding their heads and they would be going, yeah, I was denied employment opportunities just because I'm a black man. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It's not like, because at the end of the day, you got to think about it like this. I mean, I didn't put my hand up when I was a baby and say, I'd like to be blind, please. And he didn't put his hand up and say, I'd like to be black, please. And the gay guy didn't put his hand up and say, I'd like to be gay, please. It's just what happened. That's just how it is. So, I mean, it's nobody's any different to anybody else. You know what I'm saying? So you just, and that's another reason I think why when we go back to the films that I make, I like to make fun of everybody equally, because again, I don't like to play favorites. So with How to Land That Dream Job, there's 16 different employees from 16 different walks of life. I make fun of them all equally, and none of it's done in a malicious, nasty, or malice way. It's all done in humor and in jest, and hopefully it makes people sort of laugh at themselves as well and go, I can be a little bit like that, and they have a bit of a laugh at themselves as well, which again, I think is really important for people to sort of step back a little bit sometimes and just have a little bit of a laugh at what they do and what others do. And it kind of diffuses a lot of tense situations. That's the great thing about humor. It can really diffuse a really tense situation, which I think is a very powerful thing to do.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. And also one thing which I think I mentioned in our last chat as well was, one thing about you especially is that because you've gone through the struggle that you're very self-aware. You had to obviously look at yourself when people are telling you can't do this, you can't do that. You have to look at yourself and go, can I do that? And when you make the decision you actually can, then you've got that sort of that fire behind you, and you've got that sort of the positive attitude, that positive mindset of, no, I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter what people think. I'm going to do it regardless. And along with coming with that, you obviously are quite self-reflective in that sort of sense of coming to that sort of realization, but also you're willing to take the mick out of yourself, which is even, for this chat, you've had the odd quip that I think is always really funny when, you mention her being blind and you make little jokes about it and things. It's like, that is so powerful and important for people, not only anyone who's listening who either may have a similar disability or some sort of part of their life that may come up that may cause that to happen, or just people who find parallels between their own lives, exactly as you said perfectly. I always say, you should never ever maliciously bully anyone for anything they can't choose. Now, I'm not a malicious bully, really. I'm not a proponent for malicious bullying anyway. But if someone puts their hand up and spouts out a toxic opinion and they get the shit ripped out for it, well, that's fair because you put your hand up, you said this opinion. If it's you're born and your skin is this color, or your hair is like this, or you're born with this being in air quotes wrong with you or not, if you can't choose that, then no one should really ridicule you in a horrible way for that. And I think that what you've done with Beer Nuts especially is, you've turned that, you've using comedy to kind of bridge a lot of gaps and things. And I think that it makes people, comedy is the one thing that can kind of unite anyone. You go to like a comedy gig, especially nowadays, and you look at the crowd, it's not just all 30-year-old white dudes. It's a more diverse thing, and it's becoming a lot more of a diverse sort of audience and things. And that's what people need, is the comedy to bring people together.
Absolutely, 100%. And I appreciate what you just said, because I agree with it, and thank you for your kind words too. But there's not much more I can add to that, because I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I could make fun of you because of your facial hair, but it's your choice to have that facial hair. So, that's a fair comment on my part. You know what I mean? So
exactly. With people always, I mean, my facial hair, for people if they follow me on Instagram or anything like that, they can occasionally see it, where I've got a blonde moustache and a beige and like a brown beard, and I get a lot of people make comments about that. Like, I'm out in town and people are like, why do you bleach your moustache? I'm like, I don't bleach my moustache. Why on earth would I bleach a moustache and a handlebar colour and grow the round out? What on earth kind of look am I going for? And I don't know. It's like, but I get ripped out of it for it, and that's funny. Like, I don't mind it. It's not anything hurtful. It's not anyone saying I can't do anything, or I'm a second-class citizen or anything like that because of this. And I think that what you're trying to strive for is exactly what people need, is that motivation. And that's what I said about where I spoke to you last time. It's very inspiring, but also, you're just having a laugh. You're a really fun person to speak to, and you take the mick out yourself. And I find that also with growth as an individual, I used to have it a bit when I was in school. I get bullied when I was a lot younger, and what I found was if I take the jokes, because obviously I used to get bullied for being really fat, because I used to be really fat, and obviously I'm not anymore. But I used to constantly be bullied for that, and people would give me just give me shit all the time. And it's like, once you start making the jokes before them, and because obviously when I'm fat, I can think of 100 better fat jokes than anyone who's trying to think of ad lib on the spot. I can just do reactionary thing, and if I do that and then people are laughing with me about my thing as opposed to at me, and then it slowly turns the tide, and it actually takes a lot of power away from bullies. And I find that if I have kids and they get bullied or anything, I will obviously hope they don't, but I'll say to them, well, if you're self-aware and you can take the mick out yourself, you take the bullets out of their gun, and people will then respect you a bit more.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, bullying is an awful thing. And I think everybody at some point has most likely been bullied for one reason or another. And it's horrible. It's awful. And I mean, bullies are cowards, essentially. That's what they are. They're insecure and scared about something of their own. And that's why they pick on you, because it's a get them before they get me attitude. That's the attitude a bully has. And so if you can disarm them, like you say, it's very powerful, because now they don't have to get you, because you're getting yourself. So they're like, well, what do I do now? What do I do now? And so, absolutely. So but I also think that when it comes to disability, I like to think of it as unintentional ignorance, because in Australia especially, there's not a lot of education in regards to whether it be physical or intellectual disability. And so people just plain don't understand it because there's no education there. So, and again, if you're able to educate people with humor and they can have a laugh, then all of a sudden they learn something and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that I just learned something. I thought I was being entertained, but actually they just learned something and they were entertained at the same time. So like when I made the documentary, because disability and mental health are really heavy subjects, it was really important to me to put humor through that project so that it wasn't too heavy and people aren't after 5 minutes going, oh my God, this is just, oh, Christ, what am I going to do? You know, I don't want people knifing themselves in the cinema when they watch it, you know? So it was important to me to make sure there was a steady stream of humor through that project so that, you know, you can educate, you get through to people better when they're relaxed and laughing and having a good time. So, you know, there are some really important messages in that documentary, but, you know, hopefully it sinks in a little bit better because I've put a bit of humor in there as well. So, yeah, it's a really great tool, humor. It's really important, and I think it's something that probably the world needs now more than it probably ever has, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that. And with things like Beer Nuts, it's making it, or with the internet, it's making independent creators such as, you know, yourself or myself. Obviously, I'm not necessarily in the comedy game as much, but I have the odd episode and things. But like, obviously with yourself, you know, you're just trying to, I think you said in the last podcast, you're just trying to spread you're trying to spread comedy to as many people as you can, just to entertain, and that's all you really want to do. And it's a noble thing to want to do. As you've said, you know, a lot of people who have been in your situation wouldn't have pursued that career path, and especially wouldn't be so passionate about wanting to do it. But in all honesty, what is better than sort of making people laugh, you know, in a general term?
No, precisely. And I mean, I know it sounds very corny and people might think that I'm full of shit, but the truth of the matter is that I really do enjoy entertaining people. I mean, before I was a filmmaker, I used to do stand-up comedy as a living, and, you know, getting on stage and telling jokes and having people laugh. I mean, it's a wonderful feeling to make folks laugh. You know, it's a very, anybody who's even done an open mic spot at their local bar or whatever, when they're doing a comedy night and they've put their hand up and done an open mic stuff, and a few people have had a bit of a laugh at one of their jokes, you know, they get a real rush from it because it's really, really cool to make people laugh. And, you know, with the films I do now, that's why, I mean, comedy is my genre, but it's really fantastic to, you know, have somebody download a film and they sit there for 20, 25 minutes and they can forget about their problems and just have a good laugh. It gives me pleasure to give them pleasure. I know, again, it sounds really corny and whatnot, but it is the truth. I mean, that's why anybody who's in the entertainment business, whether they're a singer, an artist, a filmmaker, whatever they might be, you know, that's why they create content, is to entertain and to give people joy. You know, I mean, even as odd as it might sound, even a horror film can give people enjoyment because people might enjoy jumping out of their skin, you know? So, you know, somebody really gets a rush out of somebody, you know, shitting their pants, and that's cool, you know, that's great. So, I mean, that's why you make your podcast, is so that people can listen to it while they're having a car ride or whatever. They're on a long, you know, a long day trip, or they've had a crappy day at work or whatever it might be. They can put on Genuine Chit-Chat, or they can watch a Beernuts Productions film, and they can forget about their problems. I mean, their wife might have left them, or they might be in financial strife, or whatever it might be, man. I mean, everybody's got something going on, but, you know, they can put on whatever piece of entertainment they want, and they can sort of melt away for half an hour or an hour or whatever it might be, and they can enjoy that. And that's really cool. It's a really lovely thing that people like you and myself can do. It's a really great gift, I suppose, that we can give people, which is great. You know, it makes me happy to entertain folks. So that's why, I mean, I always push it really hard, but that's why I always want people to watch my films, because I want them to watch them and I want them to laugh and I want them to be entertained.
Exactly, and it's a very not only noble, but it's for oneself. It's very satisfying to be able to release content that you know people are enjoying. And I want to ask as well, just when you sort of started up Beer Nuts and things, obviously there were people telling you that, you know, you wouldn't be able to do it and stuff like that. But did you have a lot of support from either family members or friends of yours that really help push you up? And also, if so, what sort of things would you recommend to people who are thinking about starting a film production company or make a movie or a podcast, anything like that? So the two-pronged question is, did you have a lot of support from family and friends about Beer Nuts when you went to start it up? And following on from that, what sort of advice would you give to people who want to pursue something like that?
Well, I suppose going backwards with your questions, because I tend to do things backwards, people say to me all the time, oh, you make it sound so easy. Oh, I wanted to make a film, so I just went ahead and made a film. But it really is that easy. I mean, I wanted to make movies. I had scripts written. So if I can't get funding from the traditional bodies, then what other choice do I have other than to fund it myself? So that's, like I said earlier, that's why I chose a documentary, because it's easy to fund and it's easy to make. And so that's why, you just got to sit down, you got to figure it out somehow. If you want to, if you're in a band, for example, we'll take that example, and you want to make music, well, scrape together the funds to get a recording studio for a day and get your gear in there and punch out what you can punch out and put your content wherever people can see it, and just go ahead and do it. I mean, the only person stopping you is you. So, I remember back after I did the documentary, I was having a bit of trouble sort of thinking to myself, well, I want to make these next films now. And I was sort of grumbling and all of that sort of stuff. And and my mate said to me, well, you're the one that chose this career path, so stop your complaining and get on with it. If you want to do it, just do it. What are you waiting for, And they're exactly correct. I mean, I'd made the documentary, which is probably the hardest step, is the first. And then I'd sort of stopped for about 6 months because I was sort of, I don't know what I was waiting for, really. I guess I thought that, well, I suppose I was thinking, well, now that I've done that, now I can get funding from the traditional bodies, but they still weren't sort of biting. And so I was like, oh, shit, well, that plan didn't work. And they were like, well, you've done it before, do it again. What's wrong with you? So, yeah, it's and that's exactly correct. So that's what I did. And like I say, I've just done my 17th film. So, it's, if people just want to create something, just go ahead. I mean, there's nothing stopping you. There's always a way. I mean, a lot of filmmakers will whinge and complain that, oh, I don't have money to get this camera, or I can't get that location or whatever. Well, work around it. Like with How to Land That Dream Job, there's only 2 locations, the outside of somebody's house and my office. So, I mean, I didn't even have to rent an office location. I just used my own. Why spend money on somebody else's office when I can just use my own? So, you just got to sit down, you got to think about things, maybe a little bit more left of center or a bit laterally. But I mean, there's always a way. Sometimes I've got to manipulate my scripts a little bit to make it fit in the budget. So if there was, I don't know, if I had a script where there was a stunt or an explosion or something like that I can't afford at the moment, well, I need to rework that joke so I can make it work. I mean, a really wonderful example is for one of the films I did, The War on Drugs. I wanted to do a scene in a laboratory. Sorry about that, but I wanted to, can't say the word. So I contacted all the universities around here and said, can I film in one of your labs? And they're like, no, go away. And I thought, well, that's not very nice. So then I had to think to myself, well, what else looks like a lab? And I'd just done a photo shoot with a magazine down at a brewing company, because obviously Beernuts Productions brewing. So they'd taken me down to a brewery to do a photo shoot. And so I thought, well, if they're cool for me, if they're cool for the magazine to do a photo shoot there, I wonder if they'll be cool for us to film there, because a brewery looks like a lab because it's all that kind of equipment, So I contacted them and they're like, yeah, you can use our brewery to film a couple of scenes. So I did. And it actually worked out for the better, because then I turned the girl that was playing a scientist, I turned her character into an alcoholic because I thought that would be funny. So if I hadn't have been at a brewery, the idea of turning her character into an alcoholic would never have come to me. And it makes that scene work even better. So, I mean, sometimes, what was it, the Rolling Stones? You don't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. And that's kind of the truth. You know what I mean? So it's, I couldn't, I think that's a really good example, actually. I couldn't get the location that I needed, but using something very similar actually worked out even better. So, yeah, you just got to think laterally and pull your resources and use your brain and just make it happen somehow.
Yeah, I've heard that sort of thing quite a lot from sort of, once again, the sort of either successful individuals or people creating a lot of content. And the sort of question is, what do I do? How do I actually get it started? And the thing is, well, the main thing is to actually put something out there. Even if the first thing you release isn't necessarily to the quality, or it doesn't have every box that you want to tick in it. But once you've released that one thing, you could turn a lot of heads, and then you can prepare for the next thing. And potentially the first thing may help sort of bump you up and get you a bit more recognized that for the second thing, or you just learn from your mistakes from the sort of first thing as well. And so I think it's a really good way of, as long as you're sort of open and still driven to keep on going and things, it doesn't, as long as you don't get bogged down by not, releasing one movie and me, for example, releasing, one podcast and suddenly, being a millionaire and being ultra famous. Like, it's just not realistic. You have to have those sort of things in place for yourself of just knowing, this is a passion project more than anything, and I want this to kind of, be self-sustaining and be big enough, but I want to make the best thing I can make at the time with what I have. And then, you can always go back and revisit it and sort it out, or you can then, as you say, you get opportunities to do things that may not have even been on the cards until you try doing these things. And obviously it's a big learning curve. And one thing I want to ask as well, you're getting we've been chatting for a long while, so I'm going to start to wrap up in a bit, but I want to ask, it is a really random question, and it sounds like it came out of nowhere, so it has nothing to do with anything we've been talking about, but just out of interest, because it was mentioned as a joke in How to Land Your Dream Job. Do you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, it's too much of a school question, but do you believe in aliens at all?
Do I believe in aliens?
It's a really weird question. I told you, I did warn you.
Well, I definitely think that human beings are such flawed creatures that there has to be something else out there, because surely we can't be the best that there is. So there has to be something, whether it's an alien or a god or something. I don't know what it is, but there's got to be something better out there, because human beings are very flawed creatures. So I can't for 1 second believe that we're as good as it gets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's a good way of putting it. I'm kind of in that similar sort of boat. I mean, obviously, I was watching it and I was laughing with, obviously, one of the interviews was with someone who said about, I won't spoil it, but they said about being abducted and things. And it made me laugh, and I just wrote down a note, because I was just like, I'm just interested to see if Gough actually believes in aliens. Just like, I mean, I believe there are probably some out there, but obviously it's a bit the size of the universe. I think there's like more galaxies than there are grains of sand on Earth, or something absolutely preposterous. And it's like, well, statistically speaking, there's probably something there. Whether or not I think they've come to Earth, I don't really think they probably have. But obviously, no one knows. But it's always just a fun question to throw that one out there like a curveball, just to like throw people off. But God,
I must say, Tanya, who did that role, I've worked with Tanya once before, and she nailed that. I got to say, she did that role really, really well, because she comes across as quite cuckoo bananas in the film, and she's actually a really lovely young lady who's very sensible and normal. But I tend to, because it's the second film she's done for me, and both times her character has been really out there and strange. And I apologized to her, because I said to her after we finished this, I said to her, I'm really sorry, Tanya. People are going to start to think you're actually like that in real life. But she's a wonderful, wonderful actress. I'm really lucky that she's been in 2 of my films now, and I've got no doubt going forward I'll work with her again, because she's a really she's a very talented young lady.
Yeah, I think all the actors you've been using were absolutely incredible. And obviously with How to Land Your Dream Job, it was a lot of people doing sort of short, almost like sketches as interviews and things. And it was just the camera on them, not really cutting. And so it was like a little, obviously there was the narration from yourself, but the camera for the most part stayed on them. So it was almost like a monologue bouncing off you sort of thing, which I really liked. And obviously when you go back to, Prostitution, the Untold Story, it was done a different way, and there were still sort of sketch-like parts in it. But then you had the 2 main actors, which were the couple that were arguing. And, a lot of that was like really, really good acting too, of just, being able to have that scene without cutting for ages, and being able to kind of remember all the dialogue, but also keep it seeming like realistic and in the right way to make it be funny as well. So I think some of the people you've chosen is great.
I'm big on that. I hate, I think it might have something to do with my bad eyesight, but I hate edits in films, because I think it takes you away from the action and from what's happening. So whenever I do any of my films, I edit as little as possible, because I think that it's really important to see, even when a character isn't speaking, you want to see their facial expression to see what their reaction is to the person that is speaking. So I'm not big on edits. And so, yeah, with my last film before my last film. So the prostitution, the untold story, there's that massive scene that goes for about 12, 13 minutes. And Rebecca and Cale, obviously they had a lot of dialogue to learn, but it was really important that they had that scene down properly and that we followed the whole action with the camera and there was no edits whatsoever, because it would have taken you right out of that moment if there had been. So it was really, really important. There was a lot of rehearsal, and they did. Actually, Rebecca, I don't know if you recognized her, because we made her up as the unemployed single mother in How to Land That Dream Job. The heroin addict is actually, that's the same actress, but the makeup, they did a really, really good job with Rebecca, because again, she's actually a really lovely and classy young lady. And the makeup artist, Alicia, she did a marvelous job with making her look like a homeless drug addict. So it was, she did a wonderful job on Rebecca's makeup. But it's actually the exact same actress that was in both of those films.
No, yeah, I didn't actually notice that, but that is incredible. That's kudos, obviously, not only to the actress herself, Rebecca, but also the makeup artist too. And so I want to just I'll start to wrap up now. So I just wanted to ask: is there? Obviously, I'll include links to Beernuts Productions and especially to your the new film and things, and I'll mention the intro and outro that I'll record separately. But essentially, where can people find Beernuts, and is there anything you kind of want to, the last sort of message you want to say to people with this chat?
Yeah, absolutely. So beernutsproductions.com. So drink a beer, eat some nuts, and watch my productions. So that's really the number one place people need to go, is just beernutsproductions.com, and they can download all of our work. So all 17 films are up there. There's 8 audio downloads, and there's also 5 books. So whatever you're into, hopefully we've got it covered. And so beernutsproductions.com, and across all the social media. So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So you just type in Beernuts Productions and we come up. So like, follow, share, all of that good stuff. But all they need to know is Beernuts Productions is where it's at. So hit it up, enjoy the work, and I genuinely do hope you all your listeners enjoy the film as much as you did.
Yeah, I'm sure they will, and I definitely implore everyone who is listening to obviously this whole chat, and anyone who listened to the chat with you previously as well, to check out Beernuts. I'm sure that they'll, obviously the YouTube channel's got a lot of sort of snippets and things to show what they can expect from a lot of the paid content on Beernuts. So I really recommend everyone goes and checks that out too.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, no, the YouTube channel's got tons of clips. It's got media clips. It's got little trailers and a few other behind the scenes kind of clips as well. So there's tons of content on our YouTube channel as well that people can enjoy. So no matter what like I say, I like to keep things as different as I can with each project. So hopefully if they download 1 or 2 films, they'll see that and they'll enjoy that, and they'll start downloading a few more and check us out on YouTube and all the socials, and hopefully get lots of fun and enjoyment out of what we do.
Well, that's absolutely perfect, and that's a great way to end it. So I just want to say thank you so much, Gough, for coming on again. We've had an absolutely fantastic chat, and I'll definitely have you on again in the future, because it's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Mike. I genuinely do appreciate you having me on the podcast and your time, and fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
No worries at all. And that's the end of the podcast. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. As I said at the start, if it is a little bit echoey for you, either in this intro, the outro, or maybe the main chat that I did with Gough, that is just because I'm moving, essentially, and I'm using a different room to usual. So if any of you audiophiles out there are getting upset about this, it won't be happening in lots of future episodes, so you don't need to worry about that. Coming up, I should have a podcast recorded with someone on Tuesday. I'm not going to say who they are, just in case you pull out, etc. And I may release that one. If it's a 2-parter, I may still release it. I haven't really figured it out. I'm hoping I'll be able to chat with them on the Tuesday. I'll be able to release the episode on the Sunday. Then if it's long enough for a 2-parter, then I'll release that Sunday and then the following Sunday. If not, I'll just release that on the Sunday. I have got 2 episodes recorded with the London rapper Shaudo, and also a friend of mine, Callum, who is the front man of the hardcore band Placeholder. So The only reason I'm not releasing them yet is because the one with Callum that I've done, he's got an EP releasing in August, and we talk about some of the stuff on the EP that he doesn't want to be announced until the EP is out, so that won't be out till probably end of August. And Shaudo also should be releasing a track around August-ish time, so I'm trying to get that released, or aiming to get that released either after the new song has dropped or potentially around that sort of time. So what I may do is, if the episode with the person doesn't go ahead, I may do a little solo podcast. If it does go ahead and it's only for 1 hour or so and it's not enough to make into a two-parter, then I may just do a little solo podcast, because as I've said in a few other podcasts, I am going away to Mexico. It's going to be sort of, I think it's 6th till 16th of August or something around those lines. And obviously I'm going to be away for a Sunday of that, and I really, in all honesty, I just need a break from podcasting and general work. When I'm over there, I'm going to be going on excursions, doing this, that and the other. I'm going to try and upload to Instagram, potentially Facebook, maybe a bit of Twitter. So if you keep up to date with me on social media, which is just, at genuine chit-chat, or I think on Instagram it's at genuine_chit-chat, because I'm a fucking idiot and decided to, miss out underscores or add in underscores when I made one or the other. So my bad. But yeah, keep up to date with me on Instagram. I post there usually daily. I often post on my story as well. I was recently messing up my VR, but I don't know if that's still my story at the moment. I post food, movie reviews, snippets of the episodes. On the Facebook page, there's also going to be movie reviews and snippets of episodes and the odd occasional thing that pops up. Twitter is like obviously cut down version of movie reviews, if I can be asked. The snippets are normally uploaded there as well, and I also share quite a lot of other podcasters' work. So if you want to get into new stuff, it's good to follow me on Twitter. If you're interested in my live Instagram, if you don't really care that much, but you vaguely want to know when episodes come out, then it's Facebook. If you really, really love me, then it is all three of them. So take your pick. Anyway, yeah, so as I said, I'm not going to be, I keep mentioning it, and I'll be putting on social media and things that I won't be releasing an episode, whatever the Sunday is between the 6th and the 16th. I will likely be releasing one when I get back. I don't think I'm only going to take a week off. So I think I'll only be taking a week off, but I may be taking 2 weeks. It really just kind of depends on the scheduling of Shaudo and Callum, or placeholder rather, as well as honestly how tired I am, because on the Sunday I'm going to be probably jet lagged, I'm going to be knackered, I'm going to be trying to fix up all my stuff from Mexico, and I'm also going to be trying to release an episode of the podcast. It may just get too much for me, and I may just say fuck it. So I'll keep people updated on social media and things. If I do release a solo episode on the Sunday before I go, I don't know what I'm going to have it about. If any of you want me to talk about anything in particular, send it my way. Otherwise, it may just be me sat in a room rambling on for like half an hour. I haven't really fully decided yet, so we'll see how the chat goes on Tuesday, if it goes ahead, which I assume it will be. Anyway, this is becoming a bit of an outro. I mean, sometimes, as you guys will know, any regular listeners, my rambly outros, I don't actually really edit them unless I cough or something in between them usually. I just kind of let myself go, and it's normally a bit of a mess. But, I don't have to, once you're at this part, you can just stop and still enjoy the rest of the shows, but some of you like me rambling on for some reason, I don't know why. So yeah, as I've said before, like, review, subscribe, all that sort of usual jazz. If I don't spend any money on advertising, I just use social media and things, and I don't have loads of money to be able to spend on my podcast. It's, a passion project of mine. So if you really enjoy these conversations, I don't have a Patreon page at the moment, at least, and I haven't got any plans to make it at the moment. I mentioned it briefly in a few episodes back, but it's just going to be too much work at the moment. So I don't have a Patreon. I don't have a way for anyone to give me money. I don't really necessarily want it. So it's just, if you really like the show, and try and find other people who enjoy it, be it sharing on social media or just talking to people, because the back catalogue of Genuine Chit-Chat, there's enough there that I feel like most people would find at least one episode interesting. So show it to your mum, show it to your sister. Only females, no males. No, I'm obviously clearly joking, and I hope you got that. Yeah, show it to literally anyone who you think would enjoy it or find it interesting or helpful in any way. I've had chats with people about depression, about anxiety, about independent filmmakers, like Gough, obviously, with this one. I've had it with, musicians, authors, psychologists, CEOs of companies. There's such a wide, and just mates of mine, I've got a couple of episodes, like one of the earlier ones with my mate Bradley, and another one with my mate Johnny. I think one of the episode names is Fleshlights in the Dishwasher, and the other one is like Hand Bras and No Vag. It's something like those ones. So they're quite early on. I think they're like episode 15-ish I sort of vaguely remember. Those are quite funny episodes. I'll be planning on doing more just sort of funny ones, but I've just been so busy with like all these guests that are super interesting and people that I don't know as well, except Callum, obviously, that I haven't really had a chance just to sit down. And I'm trying to give my friends a break rather than them hanging out with me and always feeling that I have to do a podcast. So, okay, I'm definitely rambling now. This is getting on far too long. So, anyway, sorry. Thank you, guys. I love each and every one of you, especially to anyone who listens all the way to the end through all of my incoherent rambling. So, thanks as always for listening, guys. The echo won't be persisting for too much longer. I love you all, and I'll talk to you all next week.